Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more session on Azure Administrator. Let's let's first see the agenda for this particular session, and we'll move ahead. Let me pull up my notepad. In this particular session, I'll basically introduce you guys to understand what are Azure virtual missions, and we will create a virtual mission with a Windows image on that, and then we'll install a IIS web software. Okay, and then we will create a Ubuntu operating system. Virtual machine with Ubuntu operating system, and install Apache 2, which is a web server software. And similarly, Linux virtual machine with the HTTPD as the web server. We'll install Ubuntu OS with a Tomcat web server, and we will create a virtual machine with CentOS as a operating system, and install Nginx web server software. Okay, these are the different web server softwares that are highly used in different projects to deploy different applications. So we will see all of them. All right. Now, even before we go there, first of all, we will understand what is a server. Okay. And we'll understand what is a virtual machine. And we will see how to create virtual machines on Microsoft Azure. Okay. There are a lot of concepts on virtual machines. Okay. I think next 3 4 classes we'll just discuss about virtual machines and different options on virtual machines. Okay, let me go back to my presentation. Okay, yeah, this is the agenda: creating virtual machines with different flavors of operating systems and different web servers. Now, first of all, let us understand what is a virtual machine. To understand what is a virtual machine, let us go take a step back and understand first of all what is a server. Okay, now we can find a very easy definition of a server here. Now, uh, the basic use of a server is to receive, store, and share data. Okay, this is the basic use of a server. It is to receive, store, and share the data among multiple users. This is the basic use of a server. So there are different types of servers, like there's something called as a web server, print server, file servers, mail servers, application servers. Let me share one simple example. What is the meaning of a web server? Let's say I have designed a website. When I say I have designed a website, basically there'll be a front end code, there'll be a back end code. Now, where will I develop this code? Let's say I have developed this code in my laptop. Okay. Now, I want this website to be accessed by every user across the world. Then how it is possible? Because the code is there in my laptop, right? Then what I can do, I can create a server. A server is basically which is having higher configuration in hardware than my laptop, and I have to install some web server software or a package, like let's say like Apache, like IIS, like Tomcat, or HTTPD, something, any web server software. Now, if I install a web server software, now this server will become as a web server. Now, if I install something like a file software to become this server to host files, then it will become as a file server. If I install some software to host mails, then it will become as a mail server. So basically what it is doing, it is storing, it is receiving the data, it is storing and sharing with all the users. Now, web server, all the users can access the website. Okay. So now if I give my website code, it will receive the website code and it will store the code and all the users across the world can share that particular, access that particular website. So this is one of the use case. There are a lot of use cases, like you can store data, multiple users can share the data. So enterprise businesses, for their computing needs, they require servers. Okay. Now we understood we require a server. Now what are the different parts that are there in a server? Now the first and foremost part, we know that there is a in server there is something called as a hardware. Okay. Now, what will be there in a hardware? In a hardware, there will be CPU, memory, and storage. Okay. Now, on top of this hardware, what will be there? On top of this hardware, there will be operating system, because we cannot directly communicate with the hardware. We need some software so that it can act as interpreter for humans and the hardware. That is nothing but an operating system. Now, there are different types of operating systems. There are some operating systems which are Windows based operating systems. There are some operating systems which are Linux based operating systems, or you can say Unix based operating systems. Okay. Now, on top of operating system, there is a next layer which we can call it as a database layer. So there are again different types of databases. There are databases like NoSQL databases, relational databases. In the relational databases, there is MySQL database, there's a SQL Server database, there's a Postgre database. There are a lot of database flavors. Okay. Which database we will install? It depends on what kind of application. Now, what is an application here? Now, I told you we want to host a website, so that is nothing but a application. So we will put the website code and whatever database that is required for that. And let's say if my application, let's say, let me name the application as X. Now if my application X requires Linux OS, here I'll put Linux as the operating system. Now let's say I have application Y, I require a Windows OS, then I can put Windows operating system. All right. So this is what a server is. There are multiple layers. Okay, there's a hardware. The major components on hardware is called as CPU, memory, and storage. Now there's an operating system layer, OS layer. It can be Windows based operating system or a Linux based operating system. And there's a database on top of it, and application is hosted. So all the application, whatever the data that application captures, that can be stored in a database. Now that is what a physical server is. Now what is a virtual machine? Now let us say my company has two applications, application X, okay, application Y. Now this application requires a Windows operating system. This application requires a let's say Unix based operating system like Red Hat Linux. Okay. Now what will be there in this server? Let's say there is hardware. In the hardware there will be CPU, memory, storage. Okay. Now what I told we have application X, two applications, right? One application is X, one application is Y. This requires Windows. Now this requires Red Hat Linux. Now, which OS I have to put on this top of the hardware? Should I put Windows or should I put Red Hat Linux? If I install Windows on this, only this application X will work. Okay, if I install Windows, only application X will work. If I install Red Hat Linux, only application Y will work. But I want both the applications to work. So then, instead of having the traditional Windows operating system or Red Hat Linux operating system, there is another type of operating system which is called as hypervisor. This is called as a virtualization layer. There are different hypervisors available in the market. Microsoft hypervisor is called as Hyper-V. There is another hypervisor called as Nitro, which is an AWS hypervisor. There's a hypervisor called as EXXI from VMware. Okay, there is a hypervisor called as Citrix Zen from company Citrix. These are the different types of hypervisors. Now, what this hypervisor will do? This will help us to partition this hardware, okay, and assign to, let's say, we are creating something like a logical server, okay. Now, let's say this is a logical server. On top of the server, what we have application. And here, what I'll do, I can install a Windows operating system for application X. Here I can install a Red Hat Linux operating system for my application Y. So now the server is one only. With the help of hypervisor, I am creating a logical service, or you can call it as virtual service. So this complete piece will actually act as one server, but this is not physical. Okay, this is only a software based virtual machine. Okay, or you can say that a software server which is not physical, but it acts like a server. Then we can simply name it as a virtual server or a virtual machine. So with how we are creating with the help of hypervisor. Now let's say if this particular physical server wants CPU, it can take from here. Memory, it can take from the actual physical hardware, and the storage. Now, who will help us to partition the CPU, memory, and storage between the virtual machines? This hypervisor will help us to partition the physical resources to this virtual machines. Now, in this example, I am showing only two virtual machines. If I have enough resources, we can create three virtual machines. If I have enough, four virtual machines. If I have some more, you can also have five virtual machines. Okay, that is what a basically a virtual machine is. Now, you see here, this particular virtual machine OS, we have it as Windows. In this particular virtual machine OS, we have it as Linux. Now, as we have understood what is a server and what is a virtual machine, the hands-on exercise that we are going to do is that we will create one virtual machine like this and we'll install Linux on this. We'll create another virtual machine, we'll install Windows OS. Okay. And on Windows OS, we'll make this server as a web server to host a website. Okay. So we'll install a software called as IAS. Okay. On Linux, we'll install a software called as HTTPD. Okay. And we'll also create another virtual machine with operating system as Ubuntu. This is also a Unix flavor OS. On this, we will install a web server software called as Apache. Okay, Apache 2. And we'll also create another virtual machine with the operating system called as CentOS. Okay, and yeah, we'll also install a Tomcat web server. Okay, these are the different hands-on exercise that we are going to do so that we'll understand better about virtual machines. Let me shift to my Azure console to start with the hands-on exercise. Okay, this is my Azure portal now. Okay, I logged into the Azure portal. Now, if I have to work with virtual machines, what we need to do? There are two options. One is I can go here, select all services, and then go to compute, and then we can go to, where is this, virtual machines. Okay, if you don't want to go through all these steps, you see there's a search bar on the top. You can directly type in virtual machines here. Okay, now I don't have any virtual machines here. If I want to, first of all, I'll create a Windows virtual machine. You see, it is very easy. Select this option called as create. Select option Azure virtual machine. Okay, now we already know what is a subscription, what is a resource group. Now I have two subscriptions. I will choose Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, and I don't have any resource group. Let me create a new resource group. The resource group name, I will give it as level up. Click OK. Okay. So now the resource group is created. Okay. Now we are creating a virtual machine, right? We need to give a name to this virtual machine. Okay. So on this virtual machine, once I create, I will install IIS software to make it as a web server, right? So I will name it as demo IIS. Okay, this is the name that I'm giving to this particular virtual machine. And the region, as we discussed, there are a lot of regions. I will choose the region. That means this particular virtual machine has to be created in East US region, where some data centers are there in that particular region. Okay, and we will discuss about availability options, security type later, and image, what operating system I want in this particular virtual machine that I'm creating. You see, there is couple of options: Ubuntu, Red Hat, okay, Windows 2019 data center, 2016, 2022, etc., right? Now it is showing couple of images here. If you want to see the full list of all the images, you see there's an option called as see all images. We can click on that. Okay, and you'll see all the images which are there. Okay, there are something called as my images, shared images, etc. We'll discuss them in detail later. As of now, I want to choose a Windows image, Windows server. So I will select Windows server. Okay, it will give you a full description about what is this OS. So it is basically, it is Windows Server 2002 version. Okay, and it will give a couple of other things about plans. If it is charged, it will also show you what is the charge. Couple of them are charged. Okay, and it will give you information and support and ratings and reviews about this particular image. Okay, those are the multiple options. You'll have a full list of images here. So you will definitely find the operating system that you want to have. You can see here recently used. Okay, these are the recently used. Oh, okay, let me create that again. Create virtual machine. Let me choose a different subscription, pay as you go. Okay, let me create a resource group here. Level up demo is the resource group name. Click OK. Okay, the virtual machine name, I'll give it as web is. Okay, now the image, I showed you the images, right? Let me choose the image, which is, let's say, Windows Server 2019 data center. Okay, and we'll discuss about this options, architecture, Azure spot discount in the upcoming sessions. Now the size, I want a very minimum size. One CPU, 1 GB is enough for me. Okay, and what is the username? When I want to log into the server, I want to use this as the username, and I will give my desired password. Okay, confirm the password. Right, now where I'm creating this virtual machine is getting created on AWS data centers. Now if I want to access it from my laptop, how can I do that? I need to allow some ports to work on that. So by using an RDP protocol, I can access that. So this RDP protocol is a remote desktop protocol. If we have to connect to the server remotely, we can use that. Now we also want to make this server as a web server, right? And a web server basically works on HTTP protocol. You all know that if you have to open a website, it is like HTTP colon slash slash and www. You have to give that, right? So basically it works on a HTTP protocol if you have to access a website. Now, if we have to give that permissions, we have to open another port called as HTTP port. If it is a secure website, HTTPS. We need to open these ports, then only website will become up or it will become live. All right. So now I have choose those ports HTTP and HTTPS as well. Okay. We'll discuss about these options, disks, networking management in the upcoming sessions. Let me go ahead and directly select this option called as a review and create. Now this would take about 20 to 25 seconds for the virtual machine to be created with a Windows operating system on that. Once it is created, we will log into the Windows operating system. We'll log into that particular server. Now you see here, it is showing us the cost. How much cost it is going to be per hour? It is going to be charged around 2 rupees. That means around 50 rupees per day. Okay. We'll discuss about the costing also in the upcoming sessions. So now the validation is passed. What is the meaning of validation is passed? That means whatever configuration that we have selected, it is good to create a virtual machine. That is the meaning of validation passed. Now let me select this option called as create. Now it will actually go ahead and deploy this particular virtual machine. So you see here, it is saying initializing deployment. Okay, it is submitting the deployment. This will take about another 30 seconds for the deployment to be finished. You see the deployment is in progress. Now you see on the left, there is something called as templates, inputs, outputs. We'll discuss about that later. We can also create our own template rather than running this from a UI console. Okay, you see the deployment is in progress. This would take about another 5 to 10 seconds. Now, if we see our deployment is complete, we can select this option, go to resource. Now, if you go into resource, you can see there is so this is the server that is got created, web IIS. Okay, that is the name of the server that we have given. And if you see the operating system is Windows, if you see the size, okay, the location that we have created, subscription that we have created, all the options we can see. This is the configuration that we have selected. And now you see there is something called as public IP address. Now let me copy this public IP address first. Let me put in the browser and let's see anything will come up or not. So you see there is nothing coming up, right? Now let us make this server as a web server and do the same thing. Okay. To make this server as a web server, first of all, let us connect to this server. How do I connect to this server? You remember we have opened RDP ports, right? So let us go here, select option called as RDP, that is a remote desktop connection. Okay, it will ask what is the IP address that you want to connect to. I already copied this IP address, paste it here. Okay, select option connect. Now it will ask for username and password. The username is, okay, let me give the username. This is the username that I have given, and the password. Okay, I have given the password that I have used. Select option OK. Okay, now it is asking, do you want me to authenticate to connect? Select option S. So now basically what we are doing, we have created one virtual machine on Azure cloud, and we are able to connect to this virtual machine sitting from my office. Okay, so this is with the help of the cloud. This is the power of cloud. It is very easy and very quick to create compute resources and connect to them and install the software or packages that we need. Okay, now you see the server is coming up. It is customizing all the settings. Let's give it a moment. Now if we see, we are able to log into the server, and you see there's a server manager is coming up. So if we have to make this server as a web server, we need to add a role or install a software called as IIS. How do we do that? You see there's something called as add roles and features. So IIS is a feature on Windows. Click this option. Okay, it is saying that server manager is collecting inventory data. Let us wait for a moment here. Okay, now you see we are able to do that. Now let me select next here. Installation type, whether it should be role based or feature based. Yes, it should be role based. Click on next. Server selection, this is our server name, right? So on this server I want to install, so let it be that server. Click next. Now here, what is that? I want to install web server IaaS. Select this option, select add features, click on next, 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 and install. Now we are basically installing this feature called as IIS. This will take about 5 to 10 seconds for this feature to be installed. Okay, the installation started on web IIS. Now if you see the installation is successful, let us close this and go back to our page here, and then let me run refresh this again, and you see now the web page has come up. So this is a default web page. Now if we put any our website code, our website code will come up in 2 minutes. So because that server has become as a web server. So now what is this IP address? So this is the IP address of the server that we created, public IP address. So when I put the public IP address in the browser, whatever website code that we put, it will come. This is a default which is already given by Microsoft. Okay, we can change that if you want. We will see that in future classes how to change that. Okay, so out of our agenda, we understood what is a virtual machine. We created a Windows virtual machine and we installed the IIS software on. Now we will create a Ubuntu virtual machine. We'll see how to log into that, and we'll install Apache 2 software on that. Okay. Let me go back to Azure console, go to all services, or you see there's virtual machines here. Directly select this option called as virtual machine. Select option create Azure virtual machine. Okay. Now resource group, I will create this in the same resource group, which is level up demo. Okay. Now the virtual machine name, I'll give it as web Apache. Okay. That means I'm going to install Apache software in this. Now you see the image, rest all I will leave it as defaults. The image that now we need to choose a Ubuntu OS image. Okay, I can choose between Ubuntu server 2022, or if you go to full images, there will be a lot of other options. I'm choosing Ubuntu server. If I scroll down here, you see it is asking authentication method. Do you want to use a password as an authentication or SSH public key as an authentication? As of now, we will do with password. Select this option called as password here and select the username. Username is Satish and the password I will give my desired password. Okay, and confirm password. Now I want to make this as a web server, so as usual I need to enable this HTTP and HTTPS ports. Now if you see here, I don't see an RDP port. Why? Because this Unix based operating system, if I want to connect to them remotely, we use a protocol called as SSH. For Windows based, we use a protocol called as RDP. So because this is a Unix based operating system which is Ubuntu, I have to enable SSH port. Okay. So now let me go ahead, review and create. So basically now you're creating a virtual machine with Ubuntu operating system on it. It is saying validation failed. Why the validation is failed? Okay, go to basics. Okay, select review and create. It is running a validation now. See the cost is very less here. Okay, and select create. This would take about 10 to 15 seconds for the virtual machine to be created. See, it is submitting the deployment. Okay, now you see the deployment is in progress. Now, if you see the server is created and you see this option called as go to resource, let me click on this. Now, what is the server name here? Web Apache 2. If you see the operating system is Linux based, which is Ubuntu. It is there in resource group called as level up demo, pay as you go as the subscription, and it also got a public IP address. Now, to connect to this server, select copy. I copied this public IP address. And then you have a tool called as putty. Okay, let's go to putty. Open this tool, put the IP address, paste the IP address there, select option open and accept. Give the username and password. We need to type in the password, but you'll not be able to see any password when you're typing there. But I'm able to log into this particular server. Okay, now let me copy this IP address again and let me put that in a different browser and see whether it is coming up or not. You see, it is not coming up. It is saying the site is not able to be reached. Now, I logged into this particular server, right? Okay. Now, let's say I want to install web server software, which is Apache on this. Okay. So I'm going in as a root user, sudo su. I changed from my user to root user. Okay. To install Apache software, first let us install updates. Okay, sudo apt update. It is updating the Ubuntu OS with all the latest patches and software. Okay, it is done. Now sudo apt install Apache 2 -y stands for yes. Now a default Ubuntu page should come up once this is done. Okay, this is also done. Now let me go back to here. Let me refresh this. You see, we are able to see a default web page here. Now this is a default website page, right? I want my own website page. Okay, I already have my website code. Let me show you guys that. Let's say this is my website code. Let me open with Visual Studio Code, so you guys can see the code which is there in that. Okay, this is the code which is there in that. Okay, what I'll do, let me copy this code. I'll copy this code. Okay, once I copy this code, let me go to this server. This is the server, right? Okay, now there are default folders on Linux. One of the default folder is var, right? Let me go into that. So if I do a ls here, you can see the website folder here, www. All the files that are related to websites are stored in that. Let me go to that www. Okay, and if I do ls list, I can see a folder called as html. Okay, now if I go into that folder, cd html, and I do a ls, enter, I can see a index.html file here. Okay, now what is there in this particular file? If I want to see, we could use vim index.html and enter. You see, this is what is there in that particular file. Okay, if you want, we can modify it. So this is the default page that we see that there, right? This is the default page. Okay, if we want to modify, now if I want my own website page, we have to modify this. So this is a big page. To modify that, it will become very difficult. Let's do one thing. I will just do cat. I'll just type in some random this thing and control D. Okay. Now let me go to vim index.html. Now all the code gone. Now let me put the code that I have copied. Okay, let me go back here. Let me copy the code. Copy. Okay, and let me put the code here. Save and exit. Okay. Now let us go here and refresh this page and see. You see, we are able to host a very simple website. This is my website code. Okay, so that's how easy to create virtual machine and host a website on it once we create that into a web server. All right, now we have finished introduction to virtual machine. We created Windows virtual machine and installed IIS, Ubuntu, installed Apache. Now we'll create a Red Hat Linux virtual machine and install another web software which is called as web server software, which is called as HTTPD. All right. Let me shift to my Azure console here. Go here. Go to all services again. Go to virtual machines. Select option create. Create a virtual machine. All right. Now I will choose the same resource group and the virtual machine name is Linux HTTPD. Rest all I will leave it as default. Image I will change it as Red Hat Enterprise Linux version. Okay. And authentication type, I'll use it as password. I'm giving the username and the password. I'll give the password. Okay. Confirm password. All right, and again I have to open the HTTP and HTTPS port. If you don't want to make it secure website, if you just open HTTP, that is more than enough. And then select option review and create. It will do the validation. Once the validation is done, the virtual machine will be created. You see, the validation is passed. Now select option create. Okay, you see the deployment is in progress. The deployment still is in progress. Now if we see, the resource is created. Okay, now select the option go to resource. Now as usual, you can see all the details, and this is the public IP address. Let me copy to the public IP address so that I can connect to this particular server. Now go to putty. Okay, this is a previous server. Right click, let's say a new session. Okay, another window will come up. This is the IP address. Select option open. So this is a Red Hat Linux server. Accept, login as my user and give the password. Enter. Okay, now we are logged into the Linux server as user Satish. Let me go to change as sudo user, sudo su. Okay. For Ubuntu, To update the package, we use the syntax called as um, sudo apt update, right? Similarly, here we have to use a utility called as yum. Okay, sudo m, and we have to give update. So it will update all the Linux, Red Hat Linux packages with the latest updates. Okay, sudo yum update, you see it is installing all the latest updates. Okay, it is installing. Okay, this might take about another 10 seconds. Okay, press S, enter. Is downloading packages. Okay, it will take another 10 to 15 seconds. Once it is done, we'll install HTTPD. Now, what is HTTPD? Basically, HTTPD is a web server package that is inbuilt in a Red Hat repository. So, it is there in the repository. So, we will install that on this server. How? By using a utility called as yum. So, on Red Hat Linux, if you want to install anything, we use the syntax called as yum. Okay, it will take another 5 seconds. Now, if you see, the installation is complete. Now what we need to do? We need to install HTTPD. How you can do? The syntax would be sudo yum install HTTPD. Enter. You see it is fetching that package and installing it. Okay, it is done. Now on Red Hat Linux, we also have to enable this service. How to do that? Sudo systemctl enable HTTPD. Okay, and then we also have to start this service. Start HTTPD, it is done. Now let's go copy this IP address, put that on your browser, and let's see whether it will come up or not. So it's not coming up. Basically on Red Hat Linux, especially on Azure, right? We should also update the uh, firewalls. Okay. So let's say how to update the firewalls. Let's go here. Let's go to the server. Okay. We need to run a syntax. Let me clear this first. Okay, it would be sudo. We have to work with firewall, right? Firewall hyphen cmd hyphen zone. What? For public? You should open for public. Hyphen add. From which port that it should allow the traffic? From add port is equal to port 80, right? port 80, which is a TCP port. Permanently, if I want to open hyphen hyphen permanent, enter. Okay, it is showing success. Now let us reload that. Sudo firewall hyphen cmd reload. That means reloading the firewalls. Enter. Okay, it's saying unrecognized. Okay, we have not given the argument for the switch. We have to give hyphen hyphen. Okay, enter. It is also success. Now let me come here and refresh this. Now you see a Red Hat Enterprise default page is displayed here. Okay, that means we are also able to convert a Red Hat server into a web server. Okay, we have finished these points. Next, what we'll do one thing, we'll create a CentOS and install Nginx, and then we'll create a Ubuntu, and then we'll install Tomcat. All right, let me shift to my Azure console for that. Okay, I'm on my Azure console. So first, let us create a virtual machine for that. Select option create Azure virtual machine. I will choose the same subscription and resource group. I will name the server as Tomcat Web. Okay, and operating system, I'll choose it as Ubuntu. And then password, username and password. Username, I'll give my name and password. All right, and confirm the password. Okay, and again open the web ports. I'll open HTTP and HTTPS ports, and then review and create this server. So while this server is creating, why to use this Tomcat web server software? Basically, if you're working with Java web applications, if you want to deploy Java web applications, uh, it is good if you use a Tomcat as a web server software. Okay, because it is lightweight. It basically acts as a container for your Java applications, and it has support for the other Apache web servers, etc., etc. So there are a lot of uses. If you're using Java web, I mean, if your application is based out of Java, and if you want to deploy that on a web server, your web server software should be Apache Tomcat. Okay. Now our server is getting deployed. The deployment is in progress. This will take about a minute for the deployment to finish, and then we will log into the server, and we will install Tomcat, and then we will see the default web page coming up or not. So this is other web servers are very easy to install. So Tomcat, first of all, we have to download Tomcat, because that is not part of the default repository of Ubuntu or Linux. So we have to first of all download the package like a tar file. We need to download that and unzip that and install that. Okay, so there would be a couple of more steps than what we normally do. Okay, let me go to resource. This is the public IP address. Copy. Okay, I will open in a new window. Give the IP address. We close this and select option open. Accept. Give the username here and the password. Enter. Now I'm able to log into this server. I log in as a root user. Okay, first of all, to update the software, we can use the syntax sudo apt update to update the Ubuntu software. And as I was telling you, this is basically used for Java web hosting. So we also have to make sure that we install Java. Okay. Let's say sudo apt install default JDK. That is Java Development Kit. Okay. The Java is getting installed there. And now if you want to see the Java version, we can simply give Java fun version. You can see 11 point version which is there, which is a latest JDK version. Now we need to create a user to unzip the Tomcat file, that package that we're going to download. Okay, so it will be sudo user add, that means create a user for this folder, giving permissions, etc. Okay, now once that is done, let me show you the list of steps that we need to perform here. Okay, let's see the wget version. So basically we have to download the uh, Tomcat package, right? So to download, we use a utility called as wget. Let's see the version. Okay, I'm just installing the wget. Okay, I installed it. You see the version now, 1.21. All right. And then using wget, we'll download Tomcat to a temp folder. Okay, enter. Okay, it is downloaded to the temp folder. Now let me put that by using tar. Let me put that in a folder called as /opt/tomcat. All right, and okay, now let me give permissions by using chown for the directory for the user that we have created. Okay, and let me update the script. Okay, now let us create this script file. Okay, to create the script file, I have the script here. Let me copy this from unit. We need to copy till here. Okay, and then let me create a file. Okay, we can use a v editor to create a file. The file name would be vi, it should be in the folder /etc /etc slash systemd slash system slash tomcat dot service. Okay, enter. I for insert, paste, Copy and save. Now this is done. I will give you this code for you guys so that you can do the hands-on exercise. Now let me enable the daemons. Daemon hyphen reload. Enter. It is successful. Now let me enable the Tomcat service. Okay, let me see the status of the Tomcat. You see the status, it is active. Okay. Okay, we can, we don't need to start, but let's say, let me start. Okay, that's fine. And let me configure a firewall for this. Okay, rules are updated. Now let me go back here, copy the public IP address, go to the browser, and we have given the port 8080 here, enter. Now if you see, the Tomcat web server is up. Okay. Now let's go to the next hands-on exercise, which is creating a CentOS operating system, a virtual machine with CentOS, and installing Nginx web server on that. All right. Let me do that. Let me go to my Azure portal for that. Go to all services, go to virtual machines, select option create virtual machine. Now I will choose the resource group as the same resource group and the virtual machine name as Nginx CentOS. This is one flavor of Linux. Let me choose, let's type in CentOS, enter. Okay, you see you have multiple CentOS. You see this particular image is charged. Okay, let us choose an image which is free. Okay, let's choose this. And let's select the authentication type as password. Give a username and password. Right, and retype the password and open the web server ports, which are HTTP, HTTPS, review and create. It is running the validation. Select option create. The deployment is getting initialized. Okay, the deployment is in progress. Let's wait for a moment here. Now if you see, the deployment is successful here. Let me go to resource. Let me copy the IP address to log into the server. Right click, new session. Right, select option open. Give a username. Select accept and username. Give the password. Enter. Okay, now let me go ahead, log in as a root user. Okay, let me clear the screen. And first of all, to update the latest CentOS with all the packages, sudo yum update for CentOS also we use yum utility to update the packages. Okay, see it is getting updated. This might take another 1 minute for the update to finish. Why enter? Okay, it's downloading the latest package. Let us wait for a moment here. Okay, once it is done, we'll install Nginx software and we will start it. Now the update is complete. Let us install Nginx software on this. Think this got hung. Let me create a duplicate session. Log into this. Okay, I logged into the server. Change as root user, root folder. Okay, now let us install this. Okay, sudo yum install nginx. Okay, it is asking whether you want to continue or not. Select option yes. Continue. It is installing the package. Okay, now sudo to start this sudo systemctl start the service. Our service name is nginx. Okay, now let us enable this. Okay, and see the status. Okay, you see the status is active. Okay, now the Nginx is installed. Let me copy the public IP address, put that on a browser and see whether it's working or not. Okay, now if you see, I'm able to see the Nginx default web page. That is how you install uh, Nginx web server on Ubuntu. Sorry, it is CentOS. All right, so let us check our agenda. So basically we understood what is a server, and we understood how to create Windows virtual machine, how to create Ubuntu virtual machine, Linux, and CentOS. We installed multiple web server OS, web server softwares like IIS, Apache, HTTPD, Tomcat, and Nginx. These are the majorly used web servers to deploy applications in any of the companies. All right. So this is what we have learned for today. Let us meet in the next session. You guys have a good time. Take care.